Yes?
Yeah, I'm just going to squeeze your brain for some things about extracts and oh, there was another question? Okay. Yeah, like I'm really curious on how ancient people started to collect the resins and what the resins and hash is made of and stuff.
Well, the only thing about any of that is you have to be careful you're not too hasty in doing that. You have to be prepared to do it at least a half a dozen to a dozen times so that you get the feel of it, you get into the flow. Because you can do it once and say, oh my goodness, this or that, or you can be very delighted. But the idea is that until you've done it several times.
No, I'm talking ancient hash making
Oh, well,
techniques. I'm not talking at all like
they were doing things similar to some of what we're doing with the ice extraction method, because hundreds of years ago they actually did have cloth, but they was not doing it with marijuana necessarily. They were doing it with other things, and that's how we have all these perfumes, for example. We have all these extracts for all kinds of other things that you would have a concentrate of, like oregano. These kinds of extractions, and that's what you're doing. You're either boiling it in water or in some kind of a solvent, after which you evaporate in a double pan, right? You're not heating whatever you're extracting. It's in a pan, and it's sitting in water, and that water is boiling, so that it's not in direct heat and you don't burn so easily. So if that helps to answer.
That's how they used to make it back then?
That's how extraction has been being done for a long time. It's like making booze. After you've made the wine, then you're going to heat it so that you have a vapor, which then comes together as it drips out, and you have something that's more concentrated because you're getting rid of the water. And that's how you're talking about extracting something that's more concentrated. So and there's various ways to do it. I mean, there's similarities, but the ice water method is really a wonderful, fabulous way of dealing with it because there's no impurities involved. You're not using any other chemical.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
A friend's dad told me, he said when he was traveling over in Southeast Asia, they used to take some sort of a hash where they'd send the children to come naked to the field and they'd roll the hash off their bodies. They had like little hairless bodies.
Yeah, that wasn't nearly as much fun as having your wife do it, though.
Do they still do that? And is it
yeah, but that's done. Any of these elaborate things, those are done more as a fun thing, so that people can have a good laugh. It's not done as a general thing because it's more work than it is just to either sift it or rub it by hand. Rubbing by hand is slowly but surely becoming only a thing that you're doing if you're doing hand trimming. That's the only time that people are, and you see them, and that's why it's so difficult for any of these things to become obsolete, because you say, well, if it's coming off my hands when I'm trimming, then I should be rubbing the plants like they were back then, and we go back into that cycle. There are so many ways of dealing with this plant. It just is absolutely remarkable. It's astonishing. There's no end. I mean, I cannot tell you how well I can. I am more productive now than I've ever been in my life. I have so many things to do, not just with this, but I have so many more paintings to do. I'm in the midst of probably 25 books right now that are easy for me to do. I mean, I certainly can use some help because I'm doing all of the layouts myself. This book here, I did all of the layouts, and I was dealing with it both from a previous generation of how printing was done. In other words, there were films made, whereas now there are no longer films being made for printing, it's all digital. In other words, the computer can send right to the plate making machine what the image is, so that then that plate can then come off and be burnt and it's ready to print. Before, you used to have to make films, which that film was put in front of the plate, expose the film, and then burn the plate. It was much more, it was much less complicated, but much more detailed, to the point where if you made a mistake, you had to start all over again. Now, if it's digital, you can go back in and change the file real easily. Does that help answer your question? You sure?
Kind of.
So what's not quite clear?
Well, I'm curious about like why you would do these sort of activities that are obviously very energy expending.
Well, they're not all. The butane one is a process that you have the resin in a matter of 25 or 30 seconds, maybe 3 minutes. Sorry, maybe 5, 6 minutes. but the actual beginning of it takes very little time.
And do you think it's better to smoke the extract resin of hashish for humans' like health than it is the actual?
It's hard to say that because we're all different and we can all absorb it in different ways. But the idea is to try all those different ways, because doing anything in a habitual way, you can sort of lose, not always, it all depends on every individual, you can sort of lose some of your respect for what it's doing for you unless you really treat it as a ritual. If you treat the substance in a ritualistic way, because it is really a ritual whenever you use it, it's totally unlike tobacco and alcohol. Tobacco and alcohol are not at all alike in any way. Tobacco has got nothing to do with alcohol, but they're both put into the same category because of the way people use them. Well, just like tobacco and alcohol are entirely different from each other, so is marijuana entirely different. Please don't lump them in there. Not even think of having a conversation. It's got nothing to do with it. It's not meant as a substitute in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing spiritual about tobacco. There's nothing medicinal about tobacco. Nothing is a bigger blight on human dignity than someone who's totally fucked up on alcohol. Nothing is a bigger blight than someone who can't even walk and so belligerent. So sad. That's nothing like that ever happens with, as you know, with cannabis. Amazing. It's not even a part of the same conversation. And shouldn't be. And you shouldn't let anyone try and convince you that they should be taxed the same way. It's not the same thing in any way. It should not even be discussed in the same way. Yes, sir.
Our time is precious.
Once again,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah,
you,
wrap it
Ted.
up. Thank you, Laurence, and
I hope you all got some stickers.
yeah, we'll.
I have a few extra pages if anyone would like them. These are press proofs and you're welcome to take them.
We'll be here tomorrow again for the information booth. We are
And if
coming
anybody
to-
would like a copy of this book, it's $60, but for anyone here it's $45. And this is the first book in the world that ever had any photos of real hashish. Before this book, the only photos anyone ever had seen was possibly in a newspaper in the background while the cops were standing over the table, but nothing like this. Or nothing like this.
Yeah,
Nothing. So this book is mostly Morocco, Lebanon, Afghanistan, Nepal, my photos, my stories. And if you're interested, today only.
So thank you again, Laurence. It's been charming to see how enthusiastic you've been to be here and
Thank you.
speaking.
Pleasure to share.
And the excitement's contagious.
Yeah, pleasure to share.
So yeah, so this is the first of our 22 lectures. Next week I'm going to give the lecture on the Marijuana Tax Act, so kind of the the corporate conspiracy behind the cannabis plant in the 1920s. And if you don't understand why cannabis is illegal in some ways, next week I'll give you a really good understanding of the reason Fortune 500 is trying to throw people like me and Laurence in jail. But certainly, we were very privileged to have Laurence come and kick off the year. I guess the next guest speaker I have lined up is Bill Finley from Hempology. He'll be here teaching on hemp products. I think that's 4 weeks away. So again, thank you so much for coming, Laurence. But 420 is coming on, and I guess just one more thank you to the university, whoever it is that returned my computer. Got my computer. So that's been returned. And thanks for your patience with getting it all started. And again, thanks to Laurence for coming over. It's so good to be back, everybody. Have a great year at school. Thanks for coming out.